Previously on Pretty Little Liars Original Sin.
Hi guys, it's
Lauren Daisy.
Welcome back to my channel and to another Pretty Little Liars summer school review, recap, theories, all the above. So today we're going to be talking about episode 4, and as always I have basically literally just seen it, so I am coming straight to you guys. No makeup, no nothing, like we're just, I've had this jumper for like 10 years, you know. We're just, it's cozy vibes today. We're gonna get into the recap of the episode and then also my kind of like thoughts and theories for the rest of the season, if they have changed that much, which, spoiler alert, I'm really sticking to my theory. I feel like this episode, if you haven't seen it, I made a video where I basically compiled every time that I predicted what happened in Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, and that video is going to hit so hard for season 2 because this, like, every 5 minutes in this episode I was like, I knew it, I guessed it, which I love personally. I feel like the old PLL, as much as I loved it, definitely tried really hard to surprise the viewers, shock them, like, you know, with people that we, obviously Alex Drake was someone we didn't even know, so it's like, how are we supposed to guess that she was A, like things like that. It was really for like the shock factor and like trying to trick the fans, which works to a certain extent because you do get that like moment, you know. But for me, I actually really love when I can predict stuff. Like, for me, it doesn't ruin it. I'm not like, oh, this was so predictable. I'm like, oh my god, I was able to like pick up on the kind of clues that they were leaving and figure it out. So I personally really like that. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. I really loved this episode. I thought it was really, really good. Is it my favourite so far? It might be my favourite so far, or the Sweet 16 one. That one I also really loved. So we started off with another like spooky spaghetti movie, and I have a theory about these spooky spaghetti movies that I'm going to talk about in the theories section. And it was of like Rose Waters basically being like tortured by Archie. It was, you know, the whole idea that he skinned her face to make his mask, which also like didn't really make sense because in the video he was already wearing it, like he was already wearing the mask. So like, yeah, anyway, but that was what we had. And then we cut to the girls, kind of, Mouse is telling them what happened to her, and they're all kind of chatting about it, and they kind of decide that they want to like lay low and obviously not really poke the bear. And Faran is very much like, look, I'm in the best shape of my life, I'm ready, like, A can come for me, I don't care, which honestly I was like loving. I was loving her energy. I love Faran so much. And they all decide as a group they're not going to answer any of these unknown calls, and they're going to have a group session with Dr Sullivan and tell her everything. And we've been us OG PLL girlies, we've been there before. But then the receptionist calls them back the next day and says that Dr. Sullivan actually had a bit of like an accident, an injury, and so she's recovering from that and won't be able to see them for a little while. And this is just, poor Sullivan, this is Sullivan 101, because when the girls were going to tell her about A before, then she like was basically like abducted and her son was threatened. So, you know, she's always putting herself in harm's way. Then we have Mouse actually not confronting, but asking Lola about, you know, who called you? What did they say? You know, why did you drop me off at this random ass place? And she says that Rose called and said she was calling from the other side. So Mouse is kind of like, oh shit, maybe our summoning of this ghost did work because what the fuck? Then we go over to the church and they're practicing the teen kind of like premarital sex scene between Kelly and Greg. And in it, she gets pregnant, which I knew it. I literally said in my last video, there is going to be like a teen pregnancy scene, and that is why she doesn't want Imogen to see it, because obviously that would be very like upsetting for her to see. And Kelly was being so sweet, bless her heart. She was like, you know, maybe we could change the script to say, you know, whatever you want to do, I support you. Like, you know, because obviously we have options in these kind of situations. But Pastor Malachi and Mrs. Beasley are very much like, no. Because obviously, as we know, abortion's a sin, which is just, I'm not even going to get into it. I'm not even going to get into it, but just know that I am 100,000,000% pro-choice, and do whatever the hell you want. It's your body. If you're not ready, if you know, whatever the circumstances, it should always be your choice in these situations. And I'm going to leave it at that before I go on a whole rant. But anyway, so Kelly's basically trying to say that, and Mrs. Beasley and Pastor Malachi are like, no, like, these are the devil's doubts. These aren't your doubts, you know, and all this stuff. And they tell her that she should come by later or tomorrow or something and repent for, you know, or like confess and kind of talk about these doubts with him. And basically Mrs. Beasley is like, you know, if you spent more time in church and less time rollerblading, then you wouldn't be having these doubts. So exactly like, you know, I kind of assumed she was not impressed with the fact that Kelly had gone to a Mouse's birthday party. Again, more on that theory later. So Imogen actually goes to Millwood Hospital and manages to find Dr. Sullivan and goes and visits her and says that she's her daughter so that she can go visit her. And asks her what happened, and Dr. Sullivan says that somebody pushed her down the stairs, and she thinks, you know, maybe it could be an old client. These things are kind of known to happen, but I'm fine. What was this emergency call about? And Imogen says, oh, it was nothing, you know, it was a false alarm, because she is kind of like how the OG girls were, scared of putting Dr. Sullivan in any more like danger, because it seems that these are obviously very much connected. Tabby then gets a call from PIFT, the Pennsylvania International, the Pennsylvania International Festival of Terror or something like that. And they basically say, one of our filmmakers dropped out. Obviously, your film Avenged didn't get chosen, but we liked your stuff. So if you have anything else you'd like to submit, you know, we would want to see it. And so obviously she's gassed, and she tells Christian about this, and she's like, I have 2 days to write and film and make this new short. And he is like, absolutely, like, I will help you. And she tells the other girls about this, and they're all game to help her as well, which was just so cute. I really like that we're seeing a lot more of their friendship dynamic this time around. The only thing I do wish is that Kelly was involved a little bit more. I mean, obviously she has her whole church thing going on, but when she did go to Mouse's party and has her like scenes with Faran and stuff, I think it'll be nice for next season, once she's kind of broken out of this whole thing with her mum, for her to be a lot more integrated into the group, because I kind of see her as sort of like a Mona kind of character, in which Mona never truly made it into the Liars, which was a shame, because she was obviously, you know, a really amazing character on the show. And I feel the same way about Kelly. I really am loving Kelly this season. And so I hope that towards the end of this season, or next season, she'll be like fully integrated as like the core Liars, because they really obviously seem to like her and invite her to things and want her to come for things. It's just Mrs. Beasley that's kind of holding her back at the minute. So I think it'll be nice once she's kind of free of that, for her to be a liar like properly. And I mean, I've said it a million times, I love the cast for this show. I love the Liars. And I think Mallory, who plays Kelly, and obviously who played Karen, is really, really amazing. And I think she's very likable. She brings kind of like the sort of quality that Ashley Benson brought to Hannah, in that Hannah was kind of like an it girl. She, you know, had those kinds of qualities that more cliche or like stereotypically would make a character that people don't like, you know, like and that would be difficult to warm to. But she brought a really likable nature to her, a very sweet nature to her, which I think made Hannah such a fan favorite. And I think Mallory has that same quality that she's bringing to Kelly, because obviously we saw, you know, initially that Kelly was kind of mean like her sister, and then over time she kind of like softened and we started to see more of her and her friendship with Imogen, and now her kind of like budding friendship with Faran. And so yeah, I really love her, and I'm loving what they're doing with her this season, but I do hope that next season she gets to be like a real like part of the group properly. Would be really, really cool to see. And then, what did I tell you? So Mouse basically confesses to the girls that she feels like she created Bloody Rose because in the early days of Spooky Spaghetti, she had posted on there about Archie's mask because those details hadn't really been released to the press. But she had, you know, said all these things that were clear they were only from someone who would have seen it up close and would have actually have known that it was like all stitched together and everything. And then people took what she had said about the mask and kind of ran with it, and it turned into this huge theory about the mask was made up of Rose Water's face, and it was this whole theory, and that's how Bloody Rose came to be. So she feels like she kind of set off a chain of events and blames herself for what's happening now. And I feel like it was kind of interesting because there was definitely two ways they could have gone with this. They could have gone down the route of them reassuring Mouse and it not affecting their friendship, or them being like mad at her or kind of like trusting her a little bit. And I feel like in the OG PLL, they probably would have gone down the distrust route. I feel like as much as I loved their friendship, there were definitely some times where the girls did not have faith in each other and were suspicious of one another, or, you know, like angry at one another for things. And I kind of liked that the girls just immediately said to Mouse, you know, this is not your fault. Like, someone has obviously taken this and made it into something completely different. I can't see my notes when you stand in front of the laptop like this. So then Mouse says, you know, maybe we can actually use Spooky Spaghetti. Like, maybe we can put a post out to try and find the real Rose Waters, and then, you know, we'll know if it's actually her doing all this or if it's somebody else just dressing as her. So Tabby tells Christian that she has this idea for a movie that is basically like Jaws at a movie theatre, where a projectionist who had killed someone and gone to jail escapes and wants to go back to his old movie theatre and kind of restart, you know, this kind of rampage. And one person, you know, wants to, like the manager or something, wants to shut for the weekend, but the owner doesn't because, you know, they want the money from like the ticket sales. And so that's kind of her idea, and he says that he really loves it. And they get all the girls and Ash as well to come over to the Orpheum and to film it, and I just loved it. I thought that this like scene was so cute. Like, it was so cute. Like, the girls were in like Orpheum uniforms, and we had like Noah was helping film, and then Faran was doing the sound, and Imogen was doing the lights, and it was just really fun, you know, and Ash was acting in it, and so was Christian and Mouse. And I just thought it was so cute. Like, I just love seeing them all just have fun like that. And it just makes them feel like a more genuine and cohesive like friendship group. Which I really loved. And there was a really sweet moment with Tabby and Christian where she said that she was a more like behind the scenes, like behind the camera kind of girl, and he says that she's movie star gorgeous, which she is, and she could totally be in front of the camera if she wanted to, and I just love that. I just think they're too cute. So Imogen goes to visit Dr. Sullivan again, and is kind of basically just spending time with her, like trying to keep an eye on her to make sure she's safe. And they're doing like crosswords and things, and she has a flashback to when her and Davy did a crossword together, and they kind of had this conversation about grief, her and Dr. Sullivan. And Imogen basically asks her, she's like, you know, do you have anyone I can call for you, like family, friends, anyone at all that would want to like come and visit you or make sure that you're okay? And she says no, and she also kind of hints that she has her own has had her own kind of dealings with grief and loss. So there's kind of like a hint that maybe we'll learn more about that as the season goes on. At Pimble Pizza, Noah and Jen are working, and Noah just gets really stressed out because they keep having like prank calls to the store, which she assumes are obviously like Bloody Rose. And the reason they're not saying anything when like Benny and that picks up is because they're waiting for Noah to pick up, and she just gets really stressed. And Jen says, you know, do you want to just leave and like get out of here? So they decide to go to Jen's dad's house. And it turns out he actually has a mansion. And so they like try on his new wife's like clothes, and they are drinking and, you know, in his pool and everything. And Jen kind of tells her the backstory that, you know, he works in like pharmaceuticals. So he basically makes and sells the drugs that her mum and Noah's mum are addicted to. And that when her mum needed to go to rehab, he basically said that she didn't deserve his help and that he wouldn't pay for any of it. And so Noah kind of says, you know, if he won't give you any money, maybe we should just steal it, kind of like bling ring style. And also, the side note, but the soundtrack is so good. Like, the soundtrack slaps. Like, every season is so good. So then at the pool, Henry comes and he apologizes to Faran with flowers and says he kind of overreacted about her like dance and everything. And he says that he actually wants to start taking swimming lessons so that he can be closer to her. And she says, you know, you don't have to take lessons. Like, I can give you lessons here at the pool after hours. So they kind of like set up a little date night. Also, and then we go back to Imogen and Dr. Sullivan, and they're like eating pizza together. And it's just so cute. Like, I really like their little dynamic, and I hope that it doesn't get ruined. But yeah, so Imogen gets a call from one of the Winters. I think they're called like, what are they called? I can't remember. Basically, Estelle's adoptive parents. And they ask her to babysit, which was kind of wild, I thought. Like, I understood why. It was like an emergency, and they knew they could trust Imogen, obviously, not to let anything happen to Estelle because she's her mum. But it felt like a bit of a blurred line. Like, on one hand, they were like, stop visiting. We're only going to send you photos and an update. Like, you don't get to see her. And then they're like, oh, will you come and babysit her for the night and like actually spend time with her? And like, you know, like, I just thought that was a bit of a weird like flip-flop there. But anyway, so she's like going to babysit her for the night while they go and like fly to wherever they need to be. Then when Kelly goes to the church to have her little confession, she sees Mrs. Beasley and Pastor Malachi doing some very sinful acts. And so she's like, okay, this feels like a complete joke. I need to revirginize, like, I, you know, need to be pure and all this stuff, and then you are just going off and doing this. So she decides to rebel and asks Greg if he wants to go skinny dipping later. Then in a flashback, we see that Tabby had actually pitched this idea for this short film before to Chip. They used to just like brainstorm about all the horror films they would make together, and this was one of them. It was Tabby's idea, but they did kind of, you know, brainstorm about how they would make it and what it would be like. So then while Imogen is at the Winters house, and it was just so cute to see her and Estelle together, and while she's there, Mr. Winters calls and he says not to alarm you, but one of the security system says one of the windows is open. And obviously Imogen is like, oh my god. So she's like, don't even stress, I'm gonna check it, it's gonna be fine. So she then calls Johnny and asks him if he would be able to like come over and hang out at the house, you know, as soon as possible. And she goes upstairs, and it's actually Estelle's bedroom window that's open, but she is there and she is fine. And she actually like picks her up with, she's got this like huge knife and is like going around the house, like making sure that everything's fine. It's very much, I mean, obviously this episode is called When a Stranger Calls Back, which is the sequel to When a Stranger Calls. But yeah, it's very reminiscent of When a Stranger Calls. If you haven't seen that movie, a great horror movie. I really, really like it. It's like, yeah, a whole like babysitter, killer, like, you know, all like scenario kind of thing. So that was definitely very much the vibe. So then at the pool, Faran and Henry are having their like little swimming day. I'm sorry, I still just don't, the chemistry is just not there for me with them. I'm sorry. But anyway, so they're like, you know, kissing and everything. And then Greg and Kelly show up and they're kind of like, oh, you know, we had the same idea. And Kelly's like, I just kind of wanted to get away from, like, she calls her like mama for the night, but it's fine, we will go. And Faran says, no, you know, it's all good, you guys can stay. So then it kind of turns into this like weird little double date thing, but it was actually really cute and sweet. You know, you see like Greg and Henry like interacting, which obviously they'd kind of been at odds earlier in the season. So this was like kind of like fun. And like Kelly and Faran chatting, and I really do like love their friendship. So it was nice to see them like interacting and stuff. I just thought it was sweet. But Kelly does tell Faran that Henry's been talking about their relationship and the kind of struggles they've been going through at church during their group sessions where they all kind of share everything. And Faran is obviously very upset by that. And yeah, like I mentioned, I liked Kelly last season. But I feel like this season we're really getting to learn a lot more about her and just connecting with her more. And yeah, like I said, Mallory's acting has been 10 out of 10. I mean, everyone's acting has been 10 out of 10. Zaria, Malia, Maya, Bailey, Chandler, Mallory, Jordan, just 10s across the board. 10s across the board. I love this show. I want it to get renewed for season 3 so badly. So I said in my last video that even though they hadn't really had that much screen time yet, I was already kind of obsessed with Imogen and Johnny. I felt like there was an instant chemistry between them and I really liked them. And this episode just skyrocketed. I thought they were so good in this episode, so well written. The chemistry was a 10 out of 10. And we really got to see a bit more of like Johnny's sweeter side, and he comes over and he just opens the door and Imogen's there and she's like, bless her heart, she's crying, she's got the baby, she's got the knife, and he's just kind of like, are you in the middle of a full-on spiral right now? And I was like, he's so real for that, like that's my boyfriend every day. Are you in the middle of a full-on spiral right now? And when she says yes, he's like, you know what, give me the baby and you can just have a minute to yourself to just kind of, you know, regroup. And he didn't ask her why, he didn't ask her what it was about, he just said, I'm going to help you. And I just thought that was really lovely, and I really hope he doesn't turn out to be a bad person. I don't think he will. I think he may be a red herring, but maybe not even that. And I just think he's a really sweet person for Imogen and someone that she definitely needs right now. Because she does struggle with the trust and just, you know, having a really secure kind of relationship in her life. Obviously, she has the girl, she has Tabby, but she's lost her mum. And Tabby is, you know, starting to see Christian, and obviously Mouse has Ash, and, you know, there's kind of like everyone has like kind of a partner, or, you know, they all have their own lives. They're obviously very close as a group, but they do have their own lives. And so I think Imogen having someone that's kind of just hers is really sweet. And Bailey said, you know, that she feels that Imogen has a kind of safe space within Johnny. And I just thought that was a really lovely way of putting it. And I think that really like came across in this episode. And I'm obsessed with them. I don't think they've dethroned Mouse and Ash, because I do really love them. But I think they're kind of creeping up there, I'm not gonna lie. And then later when they were sat on the couch and he said, you know, most girls I date, and she just immediately clocked it and like called him out and was like, oh, you know, like, are we dating? And they almost had their first kiss, and like the tension there was just really good. And then he offered to wait in his car all night to drive her home in the morning and like just wait so she felt safe. I mean, that is so sweet. And like Imogen deserves the best. Like she deserves the best. This entire season, I mean, obviously last season as well, I loved Imogen, but this season as well, like when that girl was mean to her and like, you know, I'm just like, Imogen, babes, like get behind me, babes. Like I defend that girl with my life. So I thought that was a really, really sweet scene. And then when she came out in the morning, he was still there, and he's like, you know, I promised I would be here, so I am. And it was just so cute, so well written. And they had their first kiss, and honestly, I was kicking my feet. I was like, these two are so adorable. I love it. I love it. I don't know, because obviously I do like rankings of love interest, and I do ranking every couple videos. I don't know if we have enough for me to really rank them. Let me know if you guys want to see that, like maybe at the end of this season, if I rank all the couples from like obviously season 1 and 2 like combined, maybe we would have enough to kind of do a bit of a ranking video. So yeah, let me know if you do want to see that. So Mouse goes back onto Spooky Spaghetti, and she sees that she got a lot of responses giving them ideas of where Rose could be. So she was like, this is perfect. So she convinces Ash to go with her and to check out all these different places. And they were on his motorbike together, and again, I mean, you know, I go on about it all the time. I love Mouse and Ash. I adore them as a couple. I've loved them like since the very beginning. And for me, like, they need to be endgame. I think with these shows, like teen drama shows in general, and obviously like PLL, you never get couples that are just consistent. And I think sometimes that can be a bit of a shame, to have couples that just bond so well and they just kind of break them up for the plot when it doesn't really need it. Like for me, after the time jump with Hannah and Caleb, they did not need to be broken up. Like, I just didn't think that was necessary. And obviously it then led to Spencer and Caleb and but Hannah and Caleb got back together in the end anyway. So I feel like it would have been more worth it to have kept them together that whole time. And so I would really love to see Mouse and Ash just be a solid couple until this show ends. I would really love that. I think that would be so different. You never get that in shows, ever. I can't think of any teen show I've ever watched where there is a couple that stay together throughout the whole thing. They always have breakups, or someone cheats, or someone does something, or someone moves, or, you know, whatever, and they end up breaking up. And I get that that's like good for plot lines and things, and we've got so many characters that you could do that. Like, obviously I don't think Faran and Henry are gonna be endgame, and I don't think Kelly and Greg will be either, and obviously Noah and Sean are on the rocks, so we're already getting that. And so I think it would be really good and different for Mouse and Ash to stay together throughout the show's entire run and just be a solid couple. I feel like to write a good couple, they don't have to have challenges all the time. Like, they don't have to break up and get back together to show they're meant to be. I think it would be nice to just see a couple that, you know, can have arguments and things, but ultimately doesn't need to break up to further their relationship and can just stay together the whole time. I would really, really love that. When Kelly got home from the pool, that was so intense. Like, that was crazy when she, you know, Mrs. Beasley was like, you're not pure, you're a sinner. And basically, you know, it's insinuated that she did hit Kelly. And Kelly then, you know, as Kelly is kind of pleading for her not to. And then Kelly in the morning wakes up in their prayer room and like comes out, and Mrs. Beasley has made her breakfast and everything. And it just feels like a very classic abusive cycle where she is very horrible to her, but then tries to like make it up to her in the morning and make it seem like, oh no, I'm just helping you. Like, I'm helping you cleanse your sins. Like, this is all for you. Like, you know, and kind of like justify it. And I think it's interesting that we're getting to see that. And poor Kelly, like, when she does have time away from this church group, we start to see more of her true personality, like when she was at the roller rink with the girls, and then when she was with Faran and at the pool. And then once she goes back to Mrs. Beasley, she then gets like pushed back, and her character kind of regresses back to the way that Mrs. Beasley wants her to be, which I think is really interesting. And I can't even imagine how psychologically damaging and confusing that is for Kelly to be like going through all of this. And also no one really knows. Like, obviously Greg goes to this church thing, but I don't think he knows how bad her home life is outside of that. Also, this is a side note, because it's not what the show, like this scene was about, but her hair looked incredible. Like, if her hair is like naturally cut, like the like beachy waves that she had, because she'd obviously been in the pool, 10 out of 10. Like, let her have that hair. So Tabby then goes to Christian and is basically honest with him and says, you know, this is an idea that I brainstormed with Chip. And he says to her, you know, you don't owe this guy anything. Like, don't feel like, you know, you do. You don't, you can't let him ruin so much more of your life than he already has. Like, this short is amazing and you came up with the idea and you should be happy about it and be proud of it and not let him, you know, take that away from you. And he says that she's, you know, incredible and she made an incredible film, and it was just, it was so good. And I love, like, the acting was so good because you could like tell that Tabby wanted to kiss him, like while he was talking. You could like see it in her face that she was like getting ready to make that move and kiss him. She was thinking about it, and I really loved that like detail. And so they did have their first kiss, and it was sweet because afterwards he said, you know, is this okay with you? And she said, is this okay with you? And they kind of had that little moment of making sure everything was good and the consent was there, because she did just kind of kiss him. And yeah, I really loved this. I thought it was a really great first kiss for them, and yeah, I'm very invested in them as well. So now we've gone to my least favourite part of the episode, and I think what is also a lot of other people's least favourite part of the episode, and kind of this season to be fair, from what I've seen online, and it is Jen and Noah. Jen calls Noah from jail saying that her dad had her arrested, and so Noah goes to Sean and says, Jen's been arrested, she needs $2,000 to be bailed out, like, can we do this? Because obviously Noah doesn't have any money, so Sean says, yeah, I'll pay for her to be bailed out. He's going to pay $2,000 to bail Jen out of jail. Okay? And also, Noah lied. Like, she said, oh, Jen just went to get her stuff and her dad, like, arrested her. He's such an asshole. But really, obviously, they had stolen from him. Which doesn't make it right, but, like, she's obviously kind of hiding the... Like, she didn't even say that she was there when it happened. So it was all very, like, dodgy business. And then, after Sean pays for her to be bailed out, Jen is back at Noah's apartment with her. And they end up kissing and making out. And I was just like... Noah. And I understand Noah felt guilty because it was her idea to steal, and she was the one that like initiated the kiss as well. Like, you know, Jen said that she felt really alone and Noah assured her that she wasn't alone, and then she went in for the kiss, which, oh gosh, yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. So then at the pool, the girl who almost drowned, if you remember in the last episode, I think it was, the episode before, her mum comes back in and basically thanks Faran again for saving her daughter's life, and says that she wishes there were more people in the world like Faran who, you know, are willing to run into the danger and save people and not, you know, run away from situations like that. And so this kind of lights a fire in Faran, and she's like, you know what, whenever A comes for me, like, let's do it. Then we go back to Mouse and Ash, and they're like looking around, and Red Right Hand played, which is so iconic. One, because obviously it's the theme for Peaky Blinders, but two, because it is very synonymous with the Scream franchise. I think I said before, like, the first season felt very Halloween reminiscent, and I think Imogen was definitely the final girl of that season. She had like the big final fight. And I think each season is going to be not based on a different horror film, but very much take inspiration from a different horror franchise, and also will have a different final girl. I think this season it's going to be Tabby. And this season I feel is very reminiscent of Scream. So I think when, like, at the end of the season, with the reveals of who, you know, the killers are and all this stuff, it'll be very, like, easy to look back and be like, okay, yeah, this is very Scream-esque. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting anyway. And yeah, then having Red Right Hand play, which is kind of like almost like the unofficial theme of Scream, was really cool as well. So they then split up to cover more ground, which obviously is a classic horror movie trope. And Farron's back at home and Henry's calling her and she's dodging his calls because obviously she's mad at him for telling the whole town their business. And then the house phone rings and she's like, oh, fine. She's like, what do you want, Henry? But it's Bloody Rose saying that it's time for her test. And Faran is like, okay, bitch. She's like, let's fucking go. And I love it. Like, she is just everything. I love Faran. So she goes there and her task is to lift this like big metal bar thing, I don't even know what it's called, for 2 hours or someone that she loves will die, which was crazy. Like, insane task. Meanwhile, Mouse calls the girls, well, she calls Imogen and is like, I think I might have found where Bloody Rose is living, under this like bridge. There's loads of tents here though. And so Imogen says, right, I'm going to collect the girls. We're going to come and help you. And obviously Faran doesn't show up. And Imogen says, I called and texted, but she didn't answer. So maybe she's just working at the pool, which is kind of wild. Like, you literally know that there's another killer on the loose and you're like, I'm sure she does at the pool. It's fine. And they find Rose, and she is played obviously by the same actor that Imogen had seen at the soup kitchen. And they find her and they tell her about Archie. They're like, oh, we want to talk to you about your son because he came after us. And she is like, Archie's alive, and she loses her shit. She is so terrified at the fact that he's alive that she runs right past them and jumps off of the bridge. Yeah. Which was wild. That was insane. All the girls are like, oh, So they literally just leave. It was kind of crazy. Like, she literally jumped to her death because of what they told her. Like, she was just living her life under that bridge. And then they tell her that Archie's alive, but she jumps to what they obviously assume is her death, and they just leave. Like, they're just like, we need to go back and go through her stuff. So anyway, like, that could have been a rescue. Like, obviously there's water under there, so yes, she probably did like hit a rock and die, is like the theory. But you probably should have still called someone in case they sent a search party out and were able to actually find her body. Like, what if she just like washed up on the shore and she could have been saved? Like, girls, what we doing here? My dog sat on the lead for my microphone. So for the rest of this video, it's camera audio. And it's bad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I can't refilm it. So hopefully it's not too unbearable. Yeah, so they go through her stuff and they find a picture of Angela. So obviously it's definitely confirmed that this is her. And they also find her Radley file. And in her Radley file, it shows that Dr. Sullivan was her doctor. So obviously all the girls are like, oh my god, Dr. Sullivan was Rose Ward's doctor, what the fuck? Then Faran completes her task, because of course she does. And then Bloody Rose comes out and tries to attack her, and we kind of get a bit of an altercation between the two of them. They fight. She actually hits Bloody Rose with like a rock on the back, and then it's only when Bloody Rose actually cuts her that she decides, okay, right, this is enough. And she runs, she climbs over this fence, and then her and Bloody Rose have this kind of like stare down between the fence, and it was really, really, really good. Okay, so now that we've done the actual recap of the episode, we can move on to theories and just all that good stuff. As always, please let me know your theories down in the comments. I always love it to see them. And let me know what you thought of this week's episode. Also, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. Okay. But yeah, let's get into it. So firstly, I think if Jen is involved, then her relationship that she's getting with Noah is going to make her feel guilty. And I think maybe in the end she will turn on whoever she's working with, because like I said, I think it could just potentially be for money or something like that. But I think in the end, in like the finale, or she will turn on that person, turn on Bloody Rose, and that could like to protect Noah and the girls, and that could result in her death. Also, in terms of Rose Waters, I feel like PLL is just known for
if there isn't a body, well, even if you do see a body, sometimes they can still be alive. And we haven't had anyone fake their death yet. I'm still, part of me will still, I think until the end of this series, always think maybe Karen's still alive. But with Rose, you know, she could have escaped, you know, Michael Myers style. And you know, yeah, I don't know if we'll see her again this season. We could do, you know, like towards the end it'll be revealed that she actually survived, or that she was taken by Bloody Rose. Or we could have a kind of I Know What You Did Last Summer kind of feeling for season 3, which I think would be really cool. Next up, I think the girls will confront Dr. Sullivan. I think they'll go into her office and, you know, like confront her about this, but I do think she's a red herring now. I thought maybe she could be involved in the beginning. She was kind of my second choice after Mrs. Beasley, but I think her and Imogen have a sweet kind of bond. I still believe that Johnny will turn out to be her son, and I think if they're both good people, that could be a really lovely little family for Imogen. You know, they kind of had that parallel between her and Dr. Sullivan doing the crosswords, and then her and Davy doing the crosswords, which I thought was sweet. And I think they have like a sweet kind of bond that she doesn't have with the other girls. And yeah, if Johnny is her son, that would be kind of nice for her to be kind of like welcomed into the fold with them a little bit. I think that would be sweet. But anyway, I do think Dr. Sullivan is going to be a red herring. I think, to be honest, I mean, I guessed that she would have been, that she was Rose's doctor at Radley. And I think that just makes sense because she worked there. Like, I don't think there's anything kind of sinister to it. I think obviously she worked at Radley. Rose was at Radley. It makes sense that she would have been a doctor at some point. And I think as well, it makes sense why she wouldn't have told the girls about it, because of doctor-patient confidentiality. Like, she's not going to be like, oh yeah, so you know, Archie, that you were like being chased by. Yeah, crazy thing, I actually was his mum's therapist years ago. I know, crazy, isn't it? Like, here's the tea. Like, that's just not going to happen because she's a therapist. She's not going to tell the girls anything about Rose because she was her patient first, and she's not gonna like tell them anything. So I feel like the girls can't expect her to have, you know, I feel like they might go in there all like guns blazing, like, why don't you tell us about Rose, and why don't you, you know, how could you keep this from us? But like, it makes complete sense that she didn't, because she was her patient. Like, that's confidential. And also, Rose wasn't anything to do with anything in season 1. She, as we've seen now, didn't even know that Archie was alive. So she wasn't involved in the murder. She clearly didn't even know that they happened, I guess, because she didn't know that Archie was alive. So I feel like anything Dr. Sullivan could have told them wouldn't really have helped them anyway. Like, what was she gonna say? Like, oh, I have some info about his childhood and about Angela, but that's not relevant to their case now. That's not relevant, especially now that Archie's on death row, like, and they're not even talking about him anymore. So I feel like, yeah, I feel like they might try and comfort Dr. Sullivan, but personally I think it makes sense why she didn't say it. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they say to her, because for me it makes complete sense. I don't think it's a shady thing, even though it might feel like it to the girls. Oh gosh, right, back to Ash, just briefly, because I don't want to manifest this, so I'm not going to spend long talking about it. But I did not like that he disappeared when Bloody Rose went and, you know, attacked Faran. He like disappeared into that like train car, and they had obviously split up, and we didn't see him again after that. So that was a little bit of a red flag. And then also we had that there was that pool dummy at Faran's task, which obviously is something that Ash would have been able to get hold of because he works at the pool. But I think that could just be red herring vibes. I think that could just be, you know, to give us more suspects to look at. I don't want to believe in my heart of hearts that Ash is bad. So I mean, maybe there could have been like a protecting Mouse kind of, like, I would have understood if there was like a Toby is A thing, right? Ash is A because he wants to protect Mouse, but Mouse was first on the fucking chopping block. So that doesn't make any sense to me, unless Bloody Rose approached him after Mouse was attacked and was like, look, if you help me out, nothing else is going to happen to Mouse. And he's kind of like chooses Mouse over the other girls. I don't know, but I just hope it's not that. I do wonder though, when Faran like came fully face to face with Bloody Rose, I wonder if she would have recognized that it was Ash under there. I mean, I know that it's a mask, but it's kind of just like bandages and like an eye. So I want, like, she knows Ash relatively well. I feel like, I don't know, like if I looked into my friend's eye, like, would I recognize them? I feel like maybe I would. I don't know. Also, I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I wonder if when she was fighting with them, if she could tell that it was a man. Like, if it was Ash, like, she would be able to tell that it was a man she was fighting with and not, like, an older woman. Do you know what I mean? In, like, the kind of strength and everything. I do wonder if she'll, like, would have been able to, like, in the next episode, maybe when she talks about it, she'll be able to give more details on how it felt to actually, like, fight with Bloody Rose. I also feel like because Faran, they made like a point of showing that Faran hit Bloody Rose on the back with that big stone. I wonder if we're gonna see somebody with a real gnarly bruise on their back, like maybe Ash at the pool, or I don't know, if Tabby sees like Christian getting changed or something, if he'll have like a bruise, or Jen maybe, just to kind of like raise suspicion around them, like, oh, Faran hit Bloody Rose. And you know, like how when Arya stabbed through the box on the Halloween train with that screwdriver that we then saw, like, I think it was like Jason had a screwdriver injury and so did somebody else, and like, you know, to kind of open up the pool of suspects. I wonder if we'll see something like that with a bruise that won't mean that, you know, they are involved. Like Ash might say, oh, you know, it happened while I was searching in those old train cars or whatever, but it'll definitely put suspicion towards them. Whether it turns out to be anything or not, I don't think so, but I think it'll be a bit of a, oh, that doesn't look good for you, babes. I also wonder if Noah will be the next to face her test, because of her cheating on Sean with Jen. And I wonder if maybe the task will be that she can only save one of them. And, you know, it's something along those lines kind of thing, that whatever the task does, she has to like go and find one of them, but she won't be able to save both of them, kind of like Batman style, you know. And I do think it's a shame they've gone in the cheating direction with her character, but at the same time, I think we saw a lot of this in the OG PLL. Like, I mean, Spencer kissed 2 guys while she was technically still with Toby. Arya was cheating on everybody all the time. Not saying that that's good, but that's kind of what we had. And you know, they're like Pretty Little Liars. They need secrets and to make mistakes, and they're teenagers, so they're gonna misjudge things. And also I think it makes for more dynamic characters when you do have them have a bit of a moral grey area sometimes. And you know, I think it's people don't act like that in real life, do you know what I mean? People aren't perfect, and I feel like there's a lot of like, oh my god, I hate Noah, like fuck Noah now, like, you know, hate cheaters, like she could die now, she could be one of the liars that dies and I wouldn't care. And I think that's crazy to make that like 180, because I still love Noah. I think Maya plays her incredibly well, and I do still, like, I think she is a good character, and I think obviously I don't agree with cheating, and I personally don't think it was the right direction for her character to go in, but at the same time, I don't know, I think there's a bit of a moral high ground when it comes to these shows, that sometimes people just need to take a bit of a step back. Like, yes, we like these characters, but also they are just characters, and they're written for TV to make plot lines and to make drama, and so I don't think it would be as interesting of a show if they didn't make these mistakes, and if they didn't do things that were maybe a little bit questionable, because that's how real people function. Like, I think it's a bit ridiculous to expect these characters to be these perfect model citizens, because humans aren't like that in real life. And I think it's funny that Noah seems to be getting a lot of hate for kissing Jen whilst she was with Sean, and yet like Spencer is a huge fan favourite, and no one ever really seems to bring up the fact that she kissed Johnny and Colin while she was technically still with Toby. And Hannah as well kissed, well, she kissed Caleb, and you know, while Caleb was still technically with Spencer. Aria cheated on every boyfriend that she had. I mean, Aria gets a lot of hate anyway, my sweet baby. And I think Hannah kissed Caleb while she was still technically with Travis. And did she kiss Holbrook while she was with Caleb? Maybe? I can't remember. But basically, the girls did a lot of questionable things in the original show, so it makes sense that they do questionable things in this show as well. And I just think the hate for Noah is a little bit, like, it's a little bit unjustified, guys. Like, come on now. That being said, I think I do struggle a little bit with the writing for Noah for this season, purely because it feels very out of character for her. I think I'm all on board with the liars making mistakes and, you know, all these things that make them more dynamic characters and make them more interesting, you know, characters. But I think it did feel a bit weird for Noah specifically, because she's kind of contradicting herself. Like, she really loved Sean in the last season and didn't really show, outside of obviously his pill problem, being unhappy with him. And even in the beginning of this season, like, she was like, oh, we're gonna have the apartment to ourselves all summer, and like, there wasn't anything really rocky in their relationship. So I think it's weird that suddenly Jen came in and now she wants to kind of kiss Jen, and even after Sean has been really sweet and literally paid Jen's bail. Like, that's crazy. Your boyfriend pays for this girl's bail and then you go and kiss her an hour later. Madness. And also, not even just like the whole Jen thing in terms of the relationship, but also she was 2 episodes ago, 1 episode ago or 2 episodes ago, she was fuming at Jen for stealing from the register, for stealing $20 out of the register. She was fuming. She was like, I can't go back to juvie, I need this job, like, stop fucking around. Literally 2 episodes later, she is like, okay, yeah, let's leave work in the middle of the day, in the middle of our shift. What happened to I don't want to lose this job? And then literally encouraged Jen to steal from her dad after she was like, no, we can't go back to juvie, like, all this stuff. Like, that's what I mean. It just, I don't mind her, you know, having this thing with Jen or being confused about her feelings or anything like that, because those are all natural things. But I think the thing that did bother me was that it felt like inconsistent writing between what we know about Noah as a character and even just what we've seen from her in these first episodes so far. It just feels like such a kind of flip-flop, and it just didn't really work for me. The thing is, I love that Maya and Ava, Noah and Jen, like the actors that play them, are really excited about bringing more queer love to Pretty Little Liars, and I completely agree with that. I just think I kind of wish it was done in a different way, because it has played into negative stereotypes of, you know, bisexual people, in that they're very, like, promiscuous and unloyal, and also that, yeah, it just felt like a little bit of a character assassination for Noah. And I just wish they'd written it in a bit of a different way. It really seems like Noah and Jen is the big ship. Like, that's like come to the forefront. And in all the behind the scenes stuff, they're talking about Noah and Jen. And like, no one is mentioning the fact that she's actually still with Sean. Like, Sean has been in hardly any promotional stuff. You know, we've hardly seen him in this series. And he doesn't get interviewed or anything like that, like the new cast are. So it's kind of interesting the way they've gone about Noah and Sean's relationship. I feel like maybe it would have almost been easier to just have them have broken up, like, in the time that we missed, or have them, like, break up right at the beginning of the season, because I don't know, it just feels weird the way they've gone about it. I also think that Kelly could end up being tested as well, and maybe even next. I think hers could maybe take place at the set for the Redemption House, potentially. I also think that the people that rented Imogen's house are the church, and I think the Redemption House is going to be set there, which is why Kelly didn't want Imogen to come, and also because obviously of the teen pregnancy storyline, she was just like, this is just going to be really insensitive to Imogen, so she kind of obviously didn't want to give her the flyers in the episode we just saw. And I do think it's interesting that Kelly went to Mouse's birthday party and Mouse had her test, and then Kelly went swimming with Faran and Faran had her test immediately after that. So like I said, I'm sticking firm with my Mrs. Beasley theory. And I think because Kelly didn't interact with any of the other girls and she was actually, you know, being all rebellious, maybe she could be next for a test. Because technically speaking, she is a final girl. Like, she was targeted by A as well, briefly, and Principal Clanton. And she was there in the finale and Greg was shot. Like, so I think technically speaking, Kelly is a final girl as well. And I think maybe they're not making a big deal about that to make it more shocking when she is chosen to be tested. If it's not Kelly next, or if Kelly's not being tested at all, I think the order is going to go Noah next, then Imogen, and then Tabby last. I think Tabby's will be the finale episode, because yeah, we've got 5, 6, 7 and 8 left. So I think we could get Kelly, Noah, Imogen and Tabby for that final episode in terms of our final girl tests. I also, yeah, I did find it interesting that Dr. Sullivan said she didn't have any family, because obviously in the OG PLL she had a son. So I'm wondering if maybe he died or they had a falling out, or she had to give him away. Yeah, so I wonder if maybe, I don't know, if maybe she, after, I wonder if maybe Dr. Sullivan, after A threatened her son, gave him to his dad, and maybe that's why they're more like distanced now or don't really talk as much, and that's why if her son is Johnny, he hasn't come to visit her, or he maybe died. I don't know though about that. I don't really feel very strongly about that, but yeah, I think we're definitely going to learn more about Dr. Sullivan and her kind of like backstory maybe in the next episode. Faran, listen, I think Faran has 10 out of 10 chemistry with both Greg and Kelly, so I would really love for one of them to be her next love interest. I think you have kind of like two different sides. You have like Greg, who's very much like enemies to lovers and like a bit of a dick, and like they all know that kind of thing. But then with Kelly, I think there's potential for a really amazing storyline there, and to almost like recreate what they had with Emily and Allison, but in a nicer way, of like they were kind of enemies and then they became friends and then maybe they would go into being girlfriends, which would be really sweet. Like if Faran is the one that ends up protecting Kelly from Mrs. Beasley, maybe in the finale, and then they share a kiss after that, like just with all the heightened emotions. So then it's kind of more of like an open idea for season 3 for them to actually be a couple or explore what that means, especially like with Kelly's kind of like religious ties, and I think it would be interesting to see that kind of dynamic, and I think they have really good chemistry, so I would be really interested in seeing those two explore something. I think that would be really sweet and just really like organic as well. I feel like they've built it up really well for if they did want to start dating in season 3. We've had a really good kind of build up to that. I also think it's Mrs. Beasley, we didn't see a lot of her in season 1, so I wonder if she's always been abusive towards the girls, or Kelly specifically, because she did always seem to kind of favour Karen, as did Tom. Or if this like really hyper religious intense abuse has been triggered by the events of Tom and Karen's death. I think this really intense religious abuse, it feels very like Carrie, if you've seen the movie Carrie or read the book of her and her mum. It seems very much like a similar kind of dynamic there. And I also wonder if she is married to Pastor Malachi. because obviously Kelly was judging her for having this like premarital sex and everything, I wonder if actually they have secretly gotten married so that their sex is not a sin, and he might even move into the Beasley house and she'll be like, this is your new dad, and Kelly will be like, I am in this another fucked up situation. I also wonder if they made a point of showing that Chip was kind of almost involved in this brainstorming idea for Tabby's new short, because somehow Mrs. Langsbury will see the performance, she'll see the short movie, and she'll try and like sue Tabby or something for like using her son's idea. I think maybe we could see that because she like was definitely kind of ready to come after Tabby and sue her for the first movie that she did. So I wonder if she'll maybe try that again with this movie, if she knew or Chip had spoken to her about the idea. I think she could try and come for Tabby again. Christian, I really do like. I love him. I think him and Tabby have sweet chemistry, but I do have a theory about him. And my theory is that he made the videos that we watch at the beginning of the episode, the spooky spaghetti videos, because they're clearly high quality. They have like quite high set design, and like the masks and the costumes, like they're pretty high quality, and we already know that he has made an Archie mask before. So I wonder, you know, he has the skill and the kind of passion to make these movies. So I wonder, you know, if he did, and if it was kind of like the masks where he made these movies before meeting Tabby and obviously would never make them now, but they do already exist and are already out there in the world. And I wonder if he had a bit of a moment of, if I tell her about these movies, she's really never going to talk to me again, so he didn't say anything. Or if maybe somebody else like bought them from him or commissioned one from him, and so his mask is what's being used in the movies. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like maybe he posted them on Spooky Spaghetti, and you know, it's gonna like come out that it was him and he posted them a while ago, or if he never actually intended for them to be released and someone just like hacked in to something or stole them, like a hard drive or something from his like kind of workshop, and then they ended up putting them on the site, and because he isn't watching them and isn't going on Spooky Spaghetti anymore, he hasn't realized that they've been posted on there. So, I haven't talked about this yet, but before the season started, we got a poster, I'll put it here, and we kind of see all the different girls, and now it's obvious that these are them doing their tests. So we have Mouse, who is obviously on fire, and we have Faran, who's carrying a log, which kind of resembles that big bar that she had to carry, right? And I feel like the tests are genuine, because at any point during Faran's task, she could have killed her. Like, she could have just come out from behind her and stabbed her before she would have been able to like put the bar down and defend herself. And with Mouse as well, like she didn't even look in the cupboards, like she wasn't trying that hard to find her. So I do think they're kind of like saw traps, in that when John Kramer is making a saw trap, he makes it so that you can escape from it. It's not going to be easy to escape from it, but ultimately it can be done. And that way, and that's what I think is happening with these girls in their final girl tests. I think they are doable, they're just incredibly hard. And so Noah's, she has like bloody feet and she's like running, and so she's on the track team, and you know, Mouse kind of like calls her the Flash, so I think hers will be something to do with running. I don't know if it's going to be like over like broken glass or something, or in some kind of like yard, but I think she's gonna have to not wear her shoes, and she's probably gonna have to run, and maybe, you know, she's running to save Jen or Sean. Like I mentioned, that might be the task, that she has to run and get to them, and that could result in Sean's death potentially. And yeah, Then we have Imogen, and Imogen is like is next to like a mummy, kind of like unraveling, and it's all like bloody bandages, and the body is grey, and it has the wrists are like cut open. And this is how Davy died. So I wonder if, I don't know if they would do this again because they already had Davy's remains in season 1, but something maybe a bit more psychological. Like the other girls' tests seem to be quite physical, and I wonder if because this season Imogen has been really struggling with her mental health and all of that, if her test is going to be more psychological and something to do with Davy, maybe Davy's remains, or maybe she'll discover that Davy didn't actually take her own life and that Archie did kill her. I think could be interesting. In the drawing she is also crying, so I do think it's going to be a very emotionally and just mentally harrowing experience for her. And then last but not least, we obviously have Tabby. So Tabby is in the middle of the poster, which makes me think that she will be last and that hers will be the finale. She has like a kind of skull person stood behind her, and she has Bloody Rose on one side and Archie on the other, and they both have knives, and she's like praying. The other scary masks like around her are also looking in her direction, so I don't know if that's a hint that it is kind of a cult thing with this church, and it's going to be revealed that like a lot of them are kind of in on this. Other than that, I feel like there isn't a lot to go on with her task, just based on the picture. I think what could be really, really fun though is if it's kind of based on her movie. So you know, if her movie does like really, really well and everyone sees it, or if she wins the, you know, like festival or whatever it is, if you can win it, I don't really know. If Bloody Rose then recreates her movie for her, so she'll be in the movie theatre and she'll be obviously be chased by a killer and have to run around the movie theatre, and the scenes of her in real life will kind of mirror the scenes that she shot of herself in the movie. And I think that's an interesting dynamic as well, because there was a really big kind of push by more conservative religious parents for like banning horror movies and kind of protesting against them. I mean, horror movies and like video games, saying that they're like sinful and they kind of encourage bad behavior in children. So if this film gets really popular and everyone in Millwood like sees it, and or if there's like a premiere or something, then they'll see that as Tabby poisoning like the purity of the town, and then will take it out on her. Also, I think it's interesting that obviously they mentioned that Sandy had like gone back to her family, which obviously we know isn't true, and that Sabrina and Nick were missing, but there's been no mention of them since then, so obviously we can assume their bodies haven't been discovered yet. And I think maybe Bloody Rose is keeping them. I don't know what for. Maybe for something to do with Redemption House, like maybe they're going to be in the loft of Imogen's house, like where Redemption House is being set, they're being like kept up there and hidden up there. Or if Tabby is going to find them in the finale, like maybe while she's running around the Orpheum, like running away from Bloody Rose, one will fall out of like an electrical cupboard, or one will be like, they'll be sat in the theatre like watching something, or you know, like something like that. I feel like surely we're going to see these bodies come back, because no one is actively looking really for these people, or really noticing that obviously they have died, and we haven't had anyone killed since the second episode, so it'll be interesting to see if we get any more kills outside of like the final girl tests. So that is it for my theories. My current theory as it stands is that Mrs. Beasley is Bloody Rose with the help of Pastor Malachi and potentially other members of the church, or like a younger accomplice, maybe Jen, to help like cleanse the town of sinners. I think Dr. Sullivan is a red herring, but she does have more knowledge than we have been led to believe, like about the Waters family, and I think at some point she will tell the girls about our OG liars and that experience she had then. Like I said, I do think Johnny's her son as well. And so I think it's kind of like two mysteries running alongside each other, like parallel. We have Mrs. Beasley using Bloody Rose as a disguise, rather than it having anything to do with the Waters directly. I think maybe the Waters family and what Dr Sullivan knows about them is kind of a different mystery, and like I said, Bloody Rose is just being used as a cover for what Mrs. Beasley and Pastor Malachi are doing. That's my theory. So yes, let me know in the comments what your theory is, what you thought of this week's episode, and I will see you guys in my next one. I promise there are more videos coming that aren't just Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, but we're doing these videos weekly. It is kind of hard to also film and edit other things, so yes. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.